Hello, this is Math with Beth, and we are going to do quadratic equations. We are going to convert them from standard form to vertex form, and that's going to involve completing the square. So if you have a problem in standard form, which looks like this, and you would like to convert it to vertex form, which is the easiest way to graph these parabolas, completing the square is how you need to do that. So if my equation looks like this, what that means is I probably can't factor it, because if I could factor it, I would probably do that instead. So this -5 is probably not helping me. So I'm just going to move that -5 just off to the side for now, because that's going to leave me room to complete the square, which means there's a certain number I could add that's going to make this part factor nice and pretty like this, where it's some binomial being squared. This number comes from half of this, so half of the b, and then you square it. So half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9. And I'm going to do this a few times so you'll get used to it. But that is where that 9 came from. Half of this squared. I just randomly added a 9 in the middle of this problem for absolutely no reason. So I need to come over here and do the opposite. Because now if I added 9 and subtracted 9, I technically did nothing. But what I did do is change the look of this problem, which is going to help me get to vertex form. This, you could play around with it, but it will always factor nicely to two things that look exactly the same. So in this case, x plus 3 and x plus 3, which means I can just write it x plus 3 all squared. But then don't forget you have this -5 minus 9, which really gives us -14 at the end. So this is my vertex form, which means I could tell you right now the vertex of that parabola, and I could easily graph it, because you should just be able to go to that point and then use the A to say, oh, this is just my normal parabola where I go over 1, up 1, over 2, up 4, over 3, up 9, etc., because I know the shape of a parabola. Okay, same idea here, except this makes it a little trickier. So first, I'm going to move that -3 out of the way, just kind of put it off to the side for now. But if there is a number in front of the x squared, I need to factor that out of these two things so that they become x squared plus 8x. I still have my room here where I'm going to complete the square. So what is the nice magic number I need to add here? Half of 8, 4 squared, so 16. That is the number that's going to let me do that trick where I can factor this nicely. But if I randomly added 16, I need to do something here, but it is not -16, because don't forget that there was this 2 out front, which really means I added 32 there. So if I randomly added 32 here, I need to subtract 32 to be fair. So y equals 2. This will all factor nicely to x plus 4 all squared. You can play around with it, but that's true. It is always going to come from half of this. So since we had a +8 here, I knew it was going to be x plus 4 that was going to work. So that's the completing the square. This will always come from half of that number squared, and this will always be half of that number. What do I have outside? -3 minus 32, so -35. This is my vertex form. My vertex is -4, -35, and I could graph this pretty easily now. But let's do 2 more. I'm going to do one easy one with nothing out front, just to make sure you're fine with that, and one with something out front again. So maybe pause and try this one yourself before you see me do it, to see if you understand what I'm doing. This comes from half of -10, so -5 squared. So that should always be a positive number. So I'm always going to subtract here to make it fair. Because that's a -10, x minus 5 squared is what this will become. And positive 4 minus 25 is negative 21. This is vertex form. My vertex is 5, negative 21. Okay, and one more tricky one with something out front. This minus 10, I ignore for now. The negative 1/2 needs to be factored out of the other two. So this is the easy one, but be careful. Factoring something out really means dividing. So what would negative 6 divided by negative 1/2 be? Negative 6 divided by negative 1/2. Well, remember, with fractions, instead of dividing, you can multiply and flip the second fraction. So that would become a negative 2. So negative 6 divided by negative 1/2 is really negative 6 times negative 2, so positive 12. Now I'm ready to complete the square. This number comes from half of 12, 6 squared. Now I need to do the opposite of that here, but it is not subtracting 36 because really, instead of adding 36 here, I added negative 1/2 times 36. So that is negative 18. So since I really subtracted 18 here, I now need to add 18 to be fair. So vertex form, this becomes x plus 6 all squared. This is really a positive 8. So that is my answer, my vertex form. And if I needed the vertex, it's just the opposite of that and that. If I wanted to graph this, just to make sure, negative 6, 8 is where it would start. But because of this negative 1/2 outside, it's going to go down, and it's going to go down half as much as normal. So instead of over 1, down 1, I'm going to go over 1, down 1/2, over 2, down 2. So it's going to be a little bit wider than my normal parabola. Okay, that's completing the square. I hope that helped. Let me know if you have any questions.